I have conflicting feelings on Magic Knight Rayearth. On the one hand, it's a fun enough fantasy adventure with a vibrant aesthetic, an endearing cast, and strong themes of love, guilt, and to some extent trauma. On the other hand, I've seen it described as magical girl fare, or at least existing adjacent to that canon, and I'm not quite sure that label is entirely accurate for this particular narrative. Is Magic Knight Rayearth Mahou Shoujo? It's certainly hashtag not like other magical girls. I can't believe I just wrote that. That's for sure. And you can certainly make good arguments either way, so let's do that. First, we're going to go over magical girl fare in general. What are the core principles that make a story Mahou Shoujo? Then, we're going to examine how those principles do and do not apply to Magic Knight Rayearth. From there, we may be able to draw some conclusion about whether or not Rayearth does indeed fall within that genre, but regardless of that conclusion from all that discussion, hopefully we'll be able to further elucidate the values of magical girls. Intro done, let's get to it. First, what makes magical girl shows what they are? To be clear, I'm not talking any aesthetic or narrative elements here, and for every air quotes rule I'm about to lay out, you could probably find an exception. After all, rules are meant to be broken. But still, I've spent a few years now inhaling this stuff, and while I'm certainly not the greatest authority on the subject, I do at least have a pretty good idea of the broad themes and ideals these shows tend to embody. You've got hope as an omniscient force, the drive to never give up. You've got main characters who always trust and believe in the goodness of others. You've got the overriding power of friendship and love. Lastly, this is going to be the tricky one, violence as a last resort, and never the first. We're not going to linger on the bulk of these points too much, them being fairly self-explanatory and broadly applicable. Like, you could just point to any given magical girl show and those points apply. For instance, see Hokuto Precure for Hope, Sailor Moon R, the movie for the goodness of others, literally every show ever for friendship, etc. But I do want to spend at least a little time elaborating on the magical girl's relationship with violence. Because violence has inarguably become a part of the genre. It was not always, and it does not have to be. In shows like Ojamajo Doremi and Fushigi Mahou Fun Fun Pharmacy, magic is more a nebulous force, meant to facilitate the growth of the primary cast, and is never used for either violent delights or violent ends. Going back even further in time, in the progenitor Mahou Shoujo show, Sally the Witch, magic was more or less used for fun hijinks, at most slapstick, framed as more wacky than anything. But magical girls are not 100% sugar, spice, and everything nice. Sometimes they just gotta kick butt. Your Sailor Moons and your Pretty Cures regularly see your magical girls engaging in chaotic brawls with monsters of the week with varying levels of physicality. What's key here is that the magical girl will never jump to fighting as the first option. Usually they'll be attacked first and fight back in self-defense, or are engaging against some nebulous non-human force that threatens destruction should they do nothing. And even while fighting, they'll be making speeches about love and kindness, always trying to talk down their opponents and end conflict non-violently. Again, if you want to go find exceptions, you sure as shit can, but in general, that is what tends to occur. And against who and how is that violence applied when applicable? You've got your mindless monsters of the week, which, importantly, are rarely framed as people. At most, they'll be manifestations of an insecurity in someone's heart or something to that effect, but they're still just mindless, transient things that the characters need feel no moral qualm about beating up and then magicking away into sparkly nothingness. Whenever a fellow human does get involved in a weekly brawl, whether they be an unlucky passerby or baddie, it's always cause for hesitation and restraint because the magical girl is out there to protect people, not hurt them. Even when we get to the big bads, who could be anything from tragic, misguided, yet very human figures to manifestations of vague existential concepts, the goal is rarely outright defeat, but reconciliation. See the girls of Sweet Precure hugging the incarnation of sorrow. But not every magical girl outing ends with an, and they all lived happily ever after. The first season of Sailor Moon had things go all like, and then everyone died. in its absolute gnarliest episode. Sure, most everyone got revived at the end, but the big bads Beryl and Natalia sure didn't. But at least no one cried so much as crocodile tears over them, as they were pretty unambiguously evil, their defeat in service of the greater good. Natalia is even described as being and Usagi didn't even kill her so much as blast her away with healing magic. And shit, you don't even need to be a bad guy or fighting one to get killed, just ask Mikimomo. But at least her death wasn't an intentional malicious act. At least in some sense, she got to live on and do some good. This is all to say that while the magical girl canon is no stranger to violence and death, with the exception of some trash outliers, it's never to a gratuitous or malicious degree, always implemented in service of greater ideas of hope and goodness. With all that laid out, we can finally circle back around to Magic Knight Rayearth. Given what we've laid out about Mahou Shoujo so far, how does Rayearth fit into that mold? You've probably already guessed, based on the premise of this video, that it does not do so perfectly. Don't get me wrong, in some ways it's spot on. It's big on friendship, of course, with the three main characters Hikaru, Fu, and Umi growing inseparable as they overcome incredible challenges together.
They're the best friends I've ever had!
Their belief in each other and their allies carries them through so many situations. They even engage in the classic bit of believing in the inherent goodness of their enemies so much that they make friends out of them. Not only do they break through Lagarga's brainwashing to make an ally of him, but they manage to win over Caldina and the unfortunately named Ascot simply by talking to and really getting to know them, along with some magic fights, of course. This is all to say that despite the main thrust of Magic Knight Rayearth's first season being a straightforward fantasy save the princess adventure, in all the core idealistic ways that matter, Hikaru, Fu, and Umi all fit the mold of the magical girl. In every way except one. And it's a big one. If magical girls are all about the power of love and protecting and believing in the goodness of others, then the Rayearth train follows that track until the finale of the first season, where it switches and heads down a different track. For context, the goal that the girls have been striving toward throughout the whole first season has been,
"This is Saphiro. You were summoned here by Princess Emerald to become the Magic Knights and save this world. Only the Magic Knights can save Saphiro. You three are the Magic Knights."
The Magic Knights! I'll do my best to become a Magic Knight and save Saphiro!
Unless you become the Magic Knights and save Saphiro, the three of you can never again return to your world. It was the princess's prayer that brought you here. It is her wish that you save the world of Saphiro. And in order for you to do that, you must first become the legendary Magic Knights and revive the Rune God.
Become the Magic Knights as soon as you can and save Saphiro!
3 junior high school girls have been summoned by Princess Emerald to become the Magic Knights and save an alternate world called Saphiro.
We've got to revive the Rune God and save this world! Saphiro!
We cannot go back to Tokyo until we finally save Saphiro.
My prime objective is to defeat High Priest Zagato.
So we can return to Tokyo any day now.
That theory simply does not sound correct, Miss Umi. We first have to rescue Princess Emerald, then we must save Saphiro.
Yeah, this show got quite repetitive in its expository dialogue. Anyway, so the girls go through their whole fantasy adventure with that one goal. Along the way, they get special armor and weapons, which is sweet, and then they get their own mechs, which is even sweeter, and then it's time to face down the big bad, Zagato. After a protracted fight, the girls defeat him, permanently, which may be a bit extreme, but he was the primary threat to the existence of the world, so shikatakanai. So they did it, right? They saved the princess, and the world is saved. Well, oops. Turns out Princess Emerald was in league with Zagato the whole time. The stability of the world was threatened not because Zagato was an evil man who cast some wicked spell, but because Emerald, who held the sacred role of the Pillar of Saphiro, fell in love with Zagato. It's the Pillar's duty to devote their life to praying for the stability and harmony of Saphiro, and if anything should interfere with that, then the whole world could collapse. And something did interfere. Normal, innocent love. Merely by falling in love, Emerald and Zagato threatened the existence of Saphiro. So the Magic Knights went and fucking murdered them for it. I'll say it again. Our protagonists, existing within the realm of a genre that celebrates love by having selfless heroes protect people, straight up murder two human beings for the crime of being in love. They murdered them! Just straight up murder! Like, sure, they didn't want to, but they believed that they had no choice and went through with it. Ugh. Okay, so why does it matter that Rayearth's first season ends with straight-up murder, and what does that mean through the lens of Mahou Shoujo? After all, as we've already established, the magical girl is no stranger to death, but you've got to consider the contexts of those deaths. Sailor Moon's Metallia wasn't even human, just an incomprehensible, malevolent force blown away by, and I cannot stress this enough, healing magic. Main characters in Madoka Magica die, sure, but they're brought back both through time travel shenanigans and through the main character becoming a god and saving their souls because they were right to believe in what they believed in, those magical girl ideals.
If someone ever tells me it's a mistake to have hope, well then, I'll just tell them they're wrong, and I'll keep telling them till they believe. No matter how many times it takes.
But in the case of Rayearth, it could be said that Emerald and Zagato were killed for embodying some of those ideals, for believing in the power of love above all else. The very world they lived in was held up by a system that forbade their love, casting it as a selfish, evil thing, and that's pretty messed up, man. The ending to the first season isn't antithetical to Mahou Shoujo because, oh no, they killed them and that's bad, but because the people that were killed were people that any other magical girl would be sworn to protect or find a way to save. Now, for the sake of thoroughness, it is worth mentioning that the show's second season, though beyond the scope of this video, does go some way toward addressing, you know, all of that.
I want to go back to Saphiro together again.
We have to go back.
I want to go back.
We have to go back!
Hikaru, Umi, and Fu do have to try to reconcile with the trauma they endured, and one of their main goals is to change the broken pillar system that wrought so much suffering. But it's important to note that the damage is never undone. The dead stay dead, and more will die along the way. Now, please don't take any of this as me saying that Magic Knight Rayearth is a bad show, because it's not. Examined through any other lens, it's a straightforward fantasy adventure that's perfectly splendid, with a very memeable dub.
Don't you care about the fate of Saphiro?
No.
And let's not forget, girls kicking ass with swords? Yes, please and thank you. As a fantasy, the tragic twist ending works to challenge the girl's convictions and commitment to the greater good, to do what's best for the most people, no matter how wrong it seems or how much it hurts. But again, that's not the lens we're employing here. We're looking at it through the lens of the magical girl, not as a means of qualitative judgment, but rather as a means of highlighting those same values we've been prattling on about. As to the question of whether or not Magic Knight Rayearth counts as Mahou Shoujo is really not the question we need to be asking here, because it certainly exists within that pantheon. Rather, what we need to be asking ourselves is, what does Rayearth's deviations from the genre say about the values of the magical girl? To me, cliche as it may sound, the magical girl represents the best of us. Believing in people, standing up to injustice, overcoming differences, resolving conflict with the hope for a better tomorrow, protecting everyone and protecting love, all that jazz. The magical girl fights for peace and harmony, and in so doing, both embodies those values and shows that they're worth fighting for, that they can and should be pursued. I go to magical girls in part because I want to see those values fought for and held up as good and worth protecting, as being able to be upheld even through the most dire, world-ending calamities, instilling a sense that our world can and will get better, even through its most bleak moments. The girls of Magic Knight Rayearth don't do that. Instead, they're just complicit in an unjust system that punishes love and hope. But by doing just that, Magic Knight Rayearth serves as a reminder for why I find so much comfort in the Mahou Shoujo that I know. Finding hope, even in the most dire of situations, preserving love, and protecting even those who can't help themselves. So while it hurts that the girls of Magic Knight Rayearth couldn't do that, and very intentionally so, I at least know that the will of the Mahou Shoujo is not broken. Other magical girls will uphold those values, and so can we. Thanks for sitting through my ramblings about a magic fantasy cartoon show. I imagine this is among the spicier of the takes I've put out into the world, so feel free to drop by the comments and let me know what you thought. Star Twinkle Precure is up soon, so stay tuned for that. Once again, shout out to Kai for some feedback on the script. And that's all I've got. So thanks again for watching, and don't forget to be gay and do crimes.